past, they just sort of run away from. And the other issue, too, is that a lot of people think, I feel, that the occult is such a small community, it's such a small little world. There's very few people, who know anything about this, even on a cursory level. That their investment and their involvement, however small it may be, means that they're like a big fish in a little pond. And they may not have spent a lot of time really thinking about this stuff or doing any magic, but because there's so few other people involved, they're somehow immediately granted status as a leader or somebody that we should take seriously. And that's just not the case either. I mean, you
well,
can see.
Another problem is people who start things and never keep them going. This is always amusing to me. Somebody will come out with a new blog or a new publication or some kind of journal or some kind of podcast or whatever. They'll do 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5, and then that's it. I mean, how many local body publications have you seen, or group publications, that come out with issue number 1 and never come out with issue number 2? Or if they say, okay, well, this is going to be quarterly, and then, the first one comes out, the next quarter comes, nothing comes out. Second quarter comes, maybe something comes out. Oh, we're sorry, our bad. And then nothing comes out since. I mean, it's really sad. I mean, it's one thing to produce. It's another thing to produce consistently. It takes discipline. It takes commitment. And these are the kind of things that are really lacking. And so,
we have to ask why that commitment and discipline is lacking. Now, you look at some people in the Thelema communities and in the OTO too, and these people live very lumpen lifestyles. I mean, they're not able to get much accomplished in any sphere in their world. But then you look at other people who are able to be disciplined and focused and in their regular lives, but can't seem to show that same discipline and focus in the order. And that's what I think is interesting. I mean, decrying people's lack of self-discipline and their, penchant for sentimentality and religiosity instead of self-discipline, that's fine. But why can't they be? And my feeling is that once they actually try to show discipline and focus in Thelemic magic or serious occultism, they start getting shown things they don't like, things that clash with their values or make them unhappy. So they stop and run away. And this is one of the reasons why I think it's really difficult to have a sustained kind of involvement with this stuff, because at a certain point, you're going to start seeing things that are not going to necessarily make you happy or reinforce your highest values. And so what do you do when that happens? But there's another question is, if that's not happening with you, why are you doing the occult at all? If you're not seeing things that challenge you and make you think and take you to your deepest, part of yourself and shake you up, then, why do it? So I see people struggling with this, especially some of the leaders who, used to produce amazing things and used to be very active and involved and would write books and stuff. And then, lately we've just seen less and less and less from them. And I think focusing, for example, on the beginner books, the way some of the people you've had on the show do, that enables them to just basically avoid the kind of deeper, more unhappy making things that are lurking out there, that they can keep it on a light kind of little kid level, and they never have to look at the things that are really painful. And when I say look at the things that are really painful, look at things that are painful about themselves, look at things that are painful about the world, but also look at things that are painful about the OTO and the groups that they're involved with. One of the things we've been really trying to get to here is that if you're interested in occultism, which is the secret side of things in a large sense, if people want to look at the origin of the word occult, they can see that. But these are the same people who appear vastly ignorant and uninterested in, who's really pulling their strings, who's really directing them, where their values originate from, and all the rest of it. So, we've encouraged people to look at this. But, John, you yourself have started projects that have not gone anywhere. I mean, there was an e-list that you started, the Heriliu e-list. Where did that go? That didn't go anywhere.
No, you're absolutely correct.
But why didn't it? When I challenged you about this at the time, you said there really just isn't that much stuff coming out.
Yeah, that is correct. It was an announcement list to announce things going on in the community, and yes, there wasn't a lot going on in the community. So you're absolutely right. That was a project that I started that really kind of failed, and I totally take responsibility for that. But
I got to ask you, was that really because, for example, you can do a talk radio show which features, authors in their books. But if no one's publishing any books,
right,
it's going to be hard to do that show, And if the Thelemic community, if the OTO isn't producing a lot of stuff, if it's not really generating challenging interesting, important material and creating challenging, important individuals who are out there asking the tough questions and pointing the organization in new directions and challenging it, then how can you do a show or do an E-list about those people?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see how that's possible. So I don't know if it's your fault or the fault that you tried to start or jumpstart a culture that is really stubborn and resistant to doing too much that's new. I mean, it seems like everybody wants these very Unitarian goth-like situations or these kind of middle-class conferences where they get together and everything's very self-congratulatory and, oh, aren't we wonderful? And you look at this, you're like, this is a challenge? I guess for some people it is a challenge. To me, it just doesn't seem very, very exciting or very challenging.
Well, and unfortunately, the one thing that has been coming out frequently, well, until the last few months, the podcast it's at its end. So we need to wrap this up. So thanks again for all the times that you've been on the podcast. It has really contributed immensely to the show, and the listeners really have appreciated it. So thanks for the time and effort.
I've enjoyed being on, but I really hope that if anyone takes anything away from the podcast, I hope it's that they need to go out and be as creative and as hardworking as you are. And if they don't like what you're saying or they're unhappy about what we talk about, then they need to do something that's better. And complaining about it is not the same thing as producing 2 years worth of podcasts and a blog and books and everything else. So that's really, the gauntlet has been thrown down. Now go and beat it. And I think you'd be gratified if people rose to the challenge and exceeded what you'd been able to do.
I would hope so. And so thanks again, and wish you well. 93.
Okay. 93, John.
Thanks again to Keith for being on the show. And thanks for all of my guests, and thanks to all the listeners who really made Thelema Coast to Coast possible. It's been a little over 2 years, and I think the numbers right before I recorded were around 137,000 downloads, which is pretty good, and 44 shows ain't that bad. I'm very appreciative to all of the guests who have come on and shared their knowledge and their ideas and let people know what they were doing. And also, I'm thankful to the Thelemic community for all of the support. So, anyway, without keeping this going on, I will sign off. As I usually do, I'm playing a song, and since I'm in Europe, the last song I'll be playing will be from a group called the Thelema Trio. And it is called Clarmageddon. It is completely instrumental. It's a very kind of jazz number. And again, Thelema Trio is from Belgium. So www.thelematrio.com. Thanks again to everybody for making the podcast such a success, and I wish you all well in the new year. Love's the law, love under will.